Hello friends! Thank you for joining me on another wood embroidery kit tutorial. To shop this kit, pattern, and notions, please visit my shop at flourishingfibers.com. The link will be in the video description. Alright, to get started, we're going to begin with the section here, which I'm calling the winter section. Then we're moving on to the spring, the summer, and then the fall. So you were provided with 2 needles with this kit, the tapestry number 24 and a beading needle. Now the 2 sections that might require the beading needle are these ovals and the little rosebuds. I only recommend using the beading needle as needed. Since we're going to be starting with the 2 sections that actually might require the beading needle first, it might be easier or it might be manageable to use your regular needle for those sections. Let's get started. So for the sections here, we know that there's going to be an oval that's going to be woven, and then the branches. Okay, the branches are all done in stem stitch, but before I move to the branches, I want to just mention that to make the little ovals, we need 2 straight stitches to latch the ovals to. So these 2 holes here are going to be the first straight stitch, and then the second straight stitch is actually the last stitch of your stem stitch. I hope that makes sense. So this will be the last stitch of your stem stitch. So there's a hole there at every edge of an oval. You want to make sure you skip that hole that is connected to each oval when you're doing stem stitch. This is going to be our entry and exit hole for the oval. Right now I'm going to go ahead and do a stem stitch to show how it's done, and I'm going to be skipping that hole there. I'm going to start at the very bottom, coming up through the back. Now with stem stitch, what you do is you connect the odd holes with odd and the even with evens. So I came up hole 1, I skip hole 2, and I go down hole 3. I come up hole 4, and I'm going back down hole 2. So that's how we're going to be doing the stem stitch. So now that was hole 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm coming up hole 5, and I'm going to be going down hole 3. So 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, I'm sticking to the same side of the stitch. I'm not interchanging the direction. I'm always staying for this instant on the left hand side of the stitch, going down. And my thread snagged a little. This stuff always tends to happen when I am recording, when I'm working on these tutorials. So I'm going to continue in that pattern. Now for straight stitches, you could really, there's no really specific way of doing this, but for curves, there's a recommended stitching guide. Make sure you follow the instructions on your pamphlet for that. Now here we've gotten to this section here. So I'm going to continue the stem stitch again on that hole. I'm skipping the one that is connected to the oval engraving. All right, so at this point we could go ahead and also make that little straight stitch. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch a few more of these little straight stitches just to use up some of this thread. All right, so I'm pretty close to coming to an end of a thread, so I'm gonna go ahead and secure it. I'm gonna go ahead and anchor it down to some of my surrounding stitches by just going below a few of the stitches and making a small knot. And there we go. You could go ahead and trim that off. All right, so here we have our stem stitch and a few of the little straight stitches. And I'm gonna work one more stem stitch here. There you go. Now, if you do happen to go through that hole there, the one that is part of the oval, it's not a deal breaker. There's just going to be a little bit more tension, and you might need your pliers when pulling through the white thread. All right, so now to make the ovals, I'm gonna go ahead and come up through that starting hole. Push your thread to the side, your stem stitch to the side. Come up through that starting hole. So now you're gonna go below that little straight stitch and then below this stem stitch, and you're gonna do that 4 times. Now, since there aren't any other elements, using this needle is gonna be perfectly fine. I shouldn't have any problems, but if I do, I could go ahead and switch over to the beading needle. So I'm going below my straight stitch. So now we're going below that last stem stitch to complete our first oval. Now we're just going to go ahead and do that about 3 more times. So this will equal our 4th oval. And now what I do, I'm gonna go back down that starting hole. Okay, so I'm just gonna push my threads to the side. Find that hole, go back down, and finish it off. All right, and there you have your first little woven oval. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the one here next to it. And for this one, I will probably be needing the beading needle, just because there's some stitches surrounding it that potentially could be tricky. So I'm gonna go ahead and unthread my needle, bring in my beading needle. The beading needle has a little pinch at the end. Pull your thread towards that end so it kind of secures it. And also your starting oval, it doesn't really matter if you're to the right or to the left of the stitch, so whatever makes it easier for you. So I'm going to put my piece down, because for this needle I'm going to probably need my second hand to kind of guide the needle up. I'm going to go ahead and find my starting hole and go back down. And then just fix my oval if it got a little bit weird. And there you go. Now we're moving on to the spring section. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the rosebud, then I'm going to show how to do the French knot, and then I'm going to go ahead and show how to do the tassel flower. I've already covered how to do the stem stitching. You want to stitch 3 little straight stitches that create the spokes. These should be done with very light tension because we're going to be going through them. So just go ahead and put your needle below that straight stitch to kind of loosen it up. So now that we have our 3 spokes, you could go ahead and come back up through any of the outer holes. And before I continue, let me just explain to you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and weave below and over each of the spokes until the size of the rosebud is just covering up the holes at the end. And I'm gonna go ahead and end my weaving by going down that hole there that begins that stem. So that would be the same here. When I'm done weaving my rosebud, I will end my stitch by going down that hole that starts the stem. And again, if you are having a hard time doing the weaving with this type of needle, feel free to switch over to the beading needle. So I'm just weaving over and under. So I went under that one, I'm going over that one, below this one. Not a lot of tension is needed here. I'm putting my piece down, so it's just a little bit quicker for me to do this. And it doesn't actually require that many turns to get to the size that you need. All right, so there we go. So as you can see, you can't really see the holes of the spokes. So now I'm gonna go ahead and go down that hole there that begins the branch, or ends, whichever way you want to see it. Okay. There's only about 3 rosebuds that need to be stitched. Once you're done with those, we could go ahead and do the French knots. You come up the hole, you're going to wrap your needle 3 times with the thread. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to go back down that same hole, holding tension to the side of the thread. We're going to pull, and I'm going to stick my finger through that loop to kind of continue keeping tension. Letting it go. There you go. That's the French knot. I'm going to go ahead and do that again. So we're wrapping our needle 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Going back down that same hole. You see that? I'm keeping tension on this thread. So we're moving on to the tassel. Now you want to go ahead and thread your needle, and what we're going to do, we're going to go up that hole at the base of the stem and that little straight stitch, and we're just going to leave the thread there for now. We're going to prep our loops and come back and use this. To make the tassels, all you need to do is take your thread and wrap it around your fingers about 4 times. Now some of you might be wondering, what's the size about 2 fingers width? And it might be about 1.25 to 1.5 inches. I would stick to the lower end of that, so maybe up to 1.25 inches. Give it some slack, and we're going to wrap 4 times. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm leaving it some slack again. We're trimming. We want to go ahead and bunch the loops together. You can see that. We're going to go ahead and place our bunched loops at the center of that straight stitch, and we're going to go ahead and use our needle and use our thread to tack that down. Now when you have that first stitch, this is the time where you could go ahead and adjust your loops for them to be centered. We're going to come back up that hole and continue tacking the loops down about 3-4 times. You want to avoid going through the knot. We have secured our tassels. Now all you have to do is move everything to the front part. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna now tack it down going horizontally. So find your hole. Push all your tassels to the top and then go back down. And once you get this first tack down, it gets really easy. You don't really need to continue holding the little tassels. And now we're just gonna go ahead and continue in this horizontal pattern. Just to have it secured. All right, and now you can go ahead and continue working this section in any way you see fit that will cover most of that pink section for the base. So the goal is to try to cover as much as possible. So I don't know how many stitches that was, but as you could see, it's enough to cover any of the peach thread showing there. All right, so now that we have our little tassel flower, I could go ahead and trim off these two ends, kind of leaving them about the length of the rest of the tassels. There you go. We're moving on to the summer section. This section is very simple. All it is straight stitches and stem stitch. Now the tricky part to the stem stitch is that it's kind of broken up into many sections to kind of achieve the curves. So please just look over your instruction guide for all of those little details. Right now I'm going to go ahead and just cover this main leaf. Now before I get started with that, I do want to mention there are two versions to this kit. The one that has the little lines engraved, and this one is not completed, but there's also a version of this kit that doesn't have the lines engraved. Now I did that after the fact. I deleted the lines after the fact because I noticed that some of these were chipping towards the center hole, but it's fine. You could still totally stitch this without a problem. Now to work these straight stitches, you will be using only 2 strands of thread, which actually 1 strand of thread folded over, so that equals 2. And if you have your lines engraved, just go ahead and follow your lines, and if you don't have them engraved, just go ahead and check out your guide. So this knot, it's just gonna pull through. So what I'm gonna do is just hold it with my finger until I get a few stitches down. All right, so here I could go ahead and put that starting stitch below it to kind of secure it. I'm just going to go ahead and continue. Either kit that you have, the ones with the engraved lines or not, I recommend you stitching the straight stitches first. It's just going to make the rest of the stitching a little bit easier. So I've begun the stem stitch, and as you can see from the instructions how, I started there and I'm continuing towards the bottom to this point. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you. So I'm going below the stitch, and I'm going to continue this curve just because it just makes the most sense. It's continuous. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the center, and I'm gonna work this curve here, and that's gonna be done above the stitch, mainly because the curve is going downward, so I want to push that thread down. I'm moving into the center, so I'm going to start at the center hole and work my way. First I'm going to do one side and then the other, and again I'm pushing the thread down, or I guess I'm not really sure what direction that would be, but I will be pushing the thread that way since I'm stitching in that direction. And understanding the curve and what direction to push, it really comes down with just experience. The more you do this, the more you'll see and notice what. See, if I were to just go to the top, it would create like a jagged curve, a jagged line. But since I'm pushing the thread up and going below that, I'm pushing the thread to create kind of a smoother curve. All right, and there you go. You have your first kinkle leaf. For the winter section, that's made up of a few different techniques. For the longer stems, we're using stem stitch, and there's a few little straight stitches throughout each branch. And then the larger petals are done using detached chain stitch. Now, for all the stem stitch and straight stitches, it is only 6 strands. And when working the petals, we are going to be using 12 strands. So that's 6 strands folded over to equal 12. So I have found it that the easiest way is to go ahead and do all the stem stitching and the straight stitching, and then you could go ahead and swap your thread. The larger stem is done in stem stitch, and there's all these little lines throughout that are just straight stitches. You know, for sections like this where the stitch is longer, those are also straight stitches. Again, the only time that we are doing stem stitch is for those center branches. Okay. This is 6 strands folded over to equal 12 with the knot at the end. And what you do is you come up through one of the holes at the base of each petal, and you go back down that exact same hole, and we're going to be leaving a loop behind, as you can see. And we're going to come up the top hole of the petal. We're going to go through the loop and pull on the thread until we get the desired size or shape that we want. Be gentle at the end so you don't over pull. And then we go back down that same top hole to tack it down. And don't over pull for this section as well. We don't want to take the thread all the way through. Just your petal, and there we go. All right, we have arrived to the very last part of the kit, and that is to embroider the outer and inner ring and the gold metallic thread. Now, I know how annoying working with gold metallic thread is, but at the end of the project, it's always worth it. Just needs a little bit of patience. I really recommend embroidering this section with the beading needle. Again, you pull the thread all the way to the edge for it to pinch. The other tip I have for you is don't use a very long strand. Go towards the shorter end as opposed to the longer, and just take it slowly. So this is all stem stitch. And just work your way section by section slowly. So there will be some separating. You could either continue tugging, you could tug your thread, or you could twist your thread as you're working. That sometimes helps. For all of the inner circle, we're pushing the thread down. And when you're working, see how tricky that could be? So there's a nasty knot there, so I'm just gonna pull some out. I'm gonna go ahead and twist the thread with my fingers as I tug through the back to kind of fix that up. So yes, there will be a little bit of maneuvering. Sorry. I mean, it's just, it's part of the craft, having to deal with this. So this section here, you could have the gold thread go over or below that stem stitch. It's really up to you. There's no preference. What a mess, right? This section definitely requires patience, but you will get through it. Just work your thread as you work your piece. You know, I see that a lot of it has frayed already. I'm just pushing my needle towards past that extreme fraying. I could also start trimming some of this off so it doesn't get tangled. Once you're done stitching your inner and outer circle with the gold metallic thread, you will be done. So we've covered all the elements to complete your kit. Now to attach your hardware and your yarn, all you have to do is take a screwdriver and attach your hardware to it. The cord is extra long. You're looping it through that ring, then the next, joining the ends and tying them up, and you gather them up together to hang it on your wall. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed the tutorial. If you find it useful, please like and subscribe. This kit, along with others, are available on my online shop at flourishingfibers.com. If you have any questions pertaining to this kit or any of the others, please leave them in the comments below and I will be sure to respond. So thank you again and have a good one.